Hello everyone. In the previous video we created our abstract class called a shape 3D, and this is to show that we can have abstract classes as well as regular classes, and we can create our own classes that can inherit from either one of these. So here in this video we're going to create the header file for a new class called cube, which will inherit from the abstract class MyShape3D, as well as the normal usable class rectangle.cpp. So why don't we get started? We'll get started by creating the header file for the class. This will be simply called, well, as you can guess, mycube.h. And in here we will include first the myRectangle.h, as well as myShape3D.h. I don't think it matters what order, but I like to go about what I know was created first. So we created myRectangle first, then myShape3D, so that's the way that I will include them. So we can then continue with the declaration of the class. I'm going to say class cube. And now we're going to start the inheritance. So first I'll inherit from rectangle, and then I use a comma to inherit from shape 3D. Right? So now cube is a class that's inheriting from the rectangle class as well as the shape 3D class. So when it comes to the creation of a class like this, I want to take advantage of what we have before. So when we think of a cube, I like to think of length, width, depth, as well as surface area and volume. And it turns out for length, width, and depth, we have rectangle and shape 3D to take care of those three. So with that said, the only thing that's missing for me to create is going to be the surface area attribute, as well as the volume attribute. Right, so when I think of a cube, I have the length, width, and depth, and finally the surface area and the volume. So with that being declared and said, I know that I only need to add surface area and volume because length and width are covered by the rectangle class, and depth is taken care of by the shape3D class. So we will begin with the public functions next. So I'll follow the standard practice. For this class I will be needing three types of constructors: a unparameterized default constructor, as well as a parameterized default constructor, and it will have three inputs, so we can let the user modify these three inputs. And finally we will have our copy constructor. Right, so here they are declared. So let's continue thinking about what's going on. And one thing I need to think about when it comes is getters. So let's think about the getters one by one. I need a getter for length, width, and depth, surface area, and volume. I know that the getters for length and width are already covered by inheriting from rectangle, but what about depth? Let's double check about depth. So if we look at depth, we see that, this is a pure virtual function. So it means here, while I can omit the getters for get length and get width, I cannot do the same thing for depth. I need to override it. So let's start with that. We'll say get depth. It'll be a const. We want the body to be const. And we're going to explicitly say that we are overriding this method. Right, and what else is needed? Well, we are still missing get surface area and get volume. While those aren't provided from shape2D, rectangle, nor shape3D, we need to create our own. So why don't we go about that? We'll say get surface area. We'll make this this is a creation of its own method, so there's no need to say override or anything like that. And we'll have get volume, and we have the getters complete. So what about the setters? Well, we have a set length and set width already given to us by rectangle and shape2D, we will need to create our own set depth because set depth is a pure virtual function, so we'll need to create our own. But when I change the length and width of my cube, I need to update the surface area and volume. So you know what? Because of that, I'm going to override those methods. So I'm going to say void set length double length, right? And so I'm going to override rectangle's version of set length because I want to make sure that I'm updating the surface area and volume. So we'll have set width, and we'll have the input for that. And then since set depth was a pure virtual function from the Shape3D class, we without a doubt need to declare and implement it. So these three are our setters, and why I want to keep these as the setters is because I shouldn't be able to modify the surface area or the volume without modifying length, width, or depth. So because of that, I'm only going to restrict any user or any class for modifying these attributes. I don't want them to modify these attributes. These attributes can only be modified by changing length, width, or depth. With that being said, we have finished our getters and setters, and we will go about creating our miscellaneous methods. One of them being the calculation of the surface area. We'll have that there. We'll give it a constant code body when we implement it. And lastly, we want volume. Right, we want to calculate surface area and volume for a cube. And this will finish our miscellaneous methods. So what about overloading operators? So we'll have cube, we'll return a reference, and we'll have the operator equals, and for the right hand side of the cube we're going to have a const and a reference to a cube. So I'm not going to overload the plus operator, but here I will just override the equals operator. So we will move on to our favorite operator to overload, the double angle brackets operator. So that way we can print our class using standard cout without any sort of problem. Right, so now the header file is complete, and all that's left to do is to implement the details of each one of these methods, and we will do that in the next video, so I will see you there.